I'd like to welcome whoever's seeing this today. My name is David Martin. I'm a friend of Craig Snyder's. I've been a friend of Craig for at least 24 years I know of. When my wife Lisa and I first met, and we were looking, Craig just come to Fitzgerald, and we were talking about getting married. And I told Craig, I said, it's nothing against you. We've already asked somebody else to marry us, and he didn't take offense to that. But Craig has always been with us all these years. If there's a title for it, what I'm about to speak about today is called the Jews' religion. And don't take offense to when I say Jews' religion. I'm using a term that was used in the book of Galatians. But my text comes from Galatians 1:14, and this is Paul's term that he uses toward the Galatians. And I want to tie two different stories together. I'm going in talking out of Galatians 1 and 2, and then I'm going to go to John chapter 5. But let's read Galatians 14, and I'm going to read this through Galatians 2, verse 16. And I want you to, I'm going to tie some points together, and I want you to listen to some things that I had noticed. Actually, a few months ago, it hit me, and I called Craig about it. I always call Craig when I see something I think's new. There's nothing new. We all know there's nothing new under the sun. But I think sometimes things are revealed to us as we can handle it. And Galatians 1:14 says, let me go to 13. For ye have heard of my conversation in time past in the Jews' religion, how that beyond measure I persecuted the church of God and wasted it. It profited in the Jews' religion above many my equals in mine own nation, being more exceedingly zealous of the traditions of my fathers. Remember that word, traditions. But when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by his grace. There's that word, grace. I underlined that when I read it a few months ago. To reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him among the heathen. Immediately I conferred not with flesh and blood. I underlined verse 16 because it goes back to the Jews' religion. And we're going to tie this into John chapter 5, verse 17. Neither went I up to Jerusalem to them which were apostles before me, but I went into Arabia and returned again unto Damascus. Then after 3 years I went up to Jerusalem to see Peter and abode with him 15 days. Now, he gives this history of what was going on. But the other of the apostles saw I none, save James, the Lord's brother. Now the things which I write unto you, behold, before God, I lie not. Afterwards I came unto the region of Syria and Cilicia, and was unknown by face unto the churches of Judea, which were in Christ. But they had heard only that he which persecuted us in times past now preacheth the faith which once he destroyed. Remember that. That's the Jews' religion that he was that destroyed, which was trying to destroy them. And again, don't take offense when I say this. This is Paul talking about what he once believed. And they glorified God in me. Then 14 years after I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, and took Titus also with me also, and I went up by revelation and communicated unto them that gospel which I preach among the Gentiles, but privately to them which were of reputation, lest by any means I should run or had run in vain. But neither Titus, who was with me, being a Greek, was compelled to be circumcised. And here's where it gets good. And that because of false brethren unawares brought in, who came in privily or privately to spy out our liberty, underline that word liberty. They came in to spy out our liberty, which we have in Jesus Christ, that they might bring us unto bondage. And let's stop right there for a second. The Jews' religion. There were those that wanted to kill Christians. We know that. Paul was one of them. But when you read Jews' religion, I put a mark, and I traced it all the way down to verse 16, which says, immediately I conferred not with flesh and blood. Immediately he didn't go back to his old religion or the Jews' religion. And then I traced that verse, then I traced it all the way down to verse 4 of chapter 2, where it says, and because the false brethren unawares brought in, who came in privately to spy out our liberty, I traced it back to the Jews' religion, or the old way of thinking. And then they come back in to try to get us back in bondage, the bondage that I was once in. Anthony Ross, a friend of mine, and I had talked one time. He and I were talking about this one day, and we all kind of come to the same point at the same time. Why would, once we have left that bondage, would we want to go back to where we were? Paul has said here, I once killed you guys. I know where I come from. And then I come all the way down here, and then he said, and it was revealed to me not of flesh and blood, not by my old religion, but by Jesus. That's what it was revealed. That's who revealed it to me. And now we're sitting here, and we understand this, and we're letting it creep back in. We're letting this old way of thinking, or we're letting the Jews' religion or the law creep back in to our liberty, trying to spoil our liberty. And there are those among us that are trying to bring us back into bondage. So why do you want to go back to that? Let me go back down. Let me jump down to verse 15 of chapter 2. Well, let me just read on down. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Verse 5. To whom we gave place by subjection, no, not for an hour, that the truth of the gospel might continue with you. In other words, we're not going to give up on our liberty. We're going to keep preaching liberty. But of these who seem to be somewhat whatsoever they were, it maketh no matter to me. God accepted no man's person. In other words, it's not about them anyway. You know, we shouldn't care what they think. For they who seem to be somewhat in conference added nothing to me. But on the contrary, when they saw that the gospel of the uncircumcision was committed unto me, as the gospel of the circumcision was to Peter. For he that wrought effectually in Peter through the apostleship of the circumcision, the same was mighty in me toward the Gentiles. And when James, Cephas, and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace that was given to me, they gave to me and Barnabas the right hand of fellowship, that we should go to the heathen and unto the uncircumcised. Grace is for everybody. It's not just for those that go to this church or that church. It's for everybody. Only they would that we should remember the poor, the same which I also was forward to do. But when Peter was come to Antioch, I withstood him to the face, because he was to be blamed. For before that certain came from James, he did eat with the Gentiles, but when they were come, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing that we were of the circumcision. There's the old law creeping back in. And the other Jews dissembled likewise with him, insomuch that Barnabas also was carried away with their dissimulation. But when I saw they walked not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, walking uprightly according to the truth of the gospel means trusting him. Oh, that's all that means. It's talking about the new way, not the old the old Jews' religion. If thou being a Jew livest after the manner of Gentiles, and not as the Jews, why compellest thou the Gentiles to live as do the Jews? We who are Jews by nature are not sinners of the Gentiles. And here's what I like. Knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the law, but by faith, the faith of Jesus Christ. Even we have believed in Jesus Christ, that we might be justified by the faith of Christ, and not by the works of the law. For by the works of the law shall no man be justified. But if while we seek to be justified by Christ, we ourselves are also found sinners, is therefore Christ the minister of sin? God forbid. For if I build again the things which I destroyed, I make myself a transgressor. Mark that verse. Why do you want to build again on the things that were once a part of your past? He's trying to remind them it does no good to go back to the law, old law, once we have been set free. Why do you want to go back to that? Why do I want to go back to that? For I, through the law, am dead to the law, that I might live under God. I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me, and the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me. Not by my faith, but by his faith. I do not frustrate the grace of God, for if righteousness come by the law, then Christ is dead in vain. Now that's a whole lot of stuff there. A whole lot of good stuff. Several years ago, and I've told this story, and I don't tell the full story, but I tell the part that makes sense to a lot of people. One day I was riding down the road, and who did we sell that car to? Charity still got it. Yeah. I thought we had sold the car. One day I was riding down the road, and I was so mad at myself and God, I punched the radio. I have a thing with cars and radios. So every car we have just don't, the radio just doesn't work or seem to work until somebody else gets it. And one day I was riding down the road and I punched the radio and I said, God, I quit. I'm tired. I'm so tired I quit. And I could hear it as plain as I'm talking here. God said, well, it's about time that you quit. It's about time that you quit and give it, just quit. And that's the day I realized I have been set free, and I just have been going back to the bondage that I was so used to. Sometimes we find comfort in bondage. I don't know why. We want somebody to always tell us what to do, and we don't. Sometimes we don't know how to handle freedom. But at that point, I didn't want to be in that bondage anymore. And He just opened it up to me and said, "You don't have to live in that bondage. I've already set you free. You choose to be in that bondage. I didn't put you there." Now, how does that tie to John chapter 5? So let's go to John chapter 5. I talk faster too when I'm on my medicine that I'm on. So I'm on medicine for my cough, and it makes me a little talkative. It makes me speak a little faster. So John chapter 5. And Brother Craig preached on this a few weeks ago, and years ago I had somebody asked me to speak on this or give me their opinion on these verses, and I did, but my opinion is just my opinion. But let's go to chapter 5, verse 1, and let me read this story. And I know you've heard the story about the gentleman at the pool of Bethesda. And I want to point out something that's relating back to Galatians 1 and 2. It says, after this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep market a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a multitude of impotent folk, blind, halt, withered, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain season into the pool and troubled the water. Whosoever then first, after the troubling of the water, stepped in, was made whole of whatsoever disease he had. And a certain man was there, which had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lie, and knew that he had been now a long time in that case, he said unto him, wilt thou be made whole? In other words, do you want to get well? And what would you say? Sure, I want to get well. This goes back to Hebrews 1, this next verse. And you say, what this got to do with it? The impotent man answered him, Sir, I have no man. In other words, there's no man that can get me out of the quandary I'm in. There's no religion that can get me out of this. If it were based on religion, I couldn't get out of it. He'd been surrounded by religious people all this time laying at the pool. Think about it, because these religious people showed up a little later. So if religion were going to help him, they'd already helped him. That's the way I see that. Sir, I have no man. And this is where it gets good. When the water's troubled to put me into the pool, but while I am coming, another steppeth down before me. Jesus said unto him, Rise, take up thy bed, and walk. Now, I don't know what that says to you, but it goes back to Hebrews what I just read, in Galatians a while ago. Rise, take up thy bed and walk. In other words, you've been laying on this cot. I look at it as religion. You've been laying on this cot of religion all this time. Pick it up, take it away, and go on. Leave it behind. Leave it behind, and just go. And it keeps on going. Immediately the man was made whole and took up his bed and walked. And on the same day was the Sabbath. Good heavens, it was on the Sabbath. It was on a day that the religious people said you couldn't do these things. But Jesus was telling him not only rise, take up thy bed and walk. In other words, he was healed from his infirmity. But I look at it like this. Why do you want to go back to what kept you there to start with? Why do you want to go back to that? And immediately the man was made whole and took up his bed and walked. And on the same day was the Sabbath. Here comes the religious people. Here they come. The Jews therefore said unto him that was cured, It is the Sabbath day. It is not lawful for thee to carry thy bed. It was a good time of day. You know, I made a note on the side when I was looking at this. It says the man didn't know nor care who Jesus was. He just had a need. He didn't care who the religious people were. He didn't care who anybody was. He just had a need that he knew that Jesus could take care of. He didn't care about any of that religious stuff. He knew that Jesus had the answer and he could take care of it. He didn't care if it was a Sabbath. He didn't care what day it was. He knew what he was doing wasn't getting it done. He was doing all he could do. And before anybody he'd get in that pool, somebody else is always stepping ahead of him. That's kind of like what I'd say religion. You know, just when you think you got it done, somebody steps in front of you and takes all the glory from you. Well, I have to tell you, it's not about you to start with. It's not about you to start with. And so, but you never see the religious people trying to pick him up and take him in. A friend of ours we met in Romania, Dan, I can't pronounce Dan's last name, but I just noticed he was engaged. Dan is engaged. But Dan made a point, and he had been dealing with drugs for several years, and he was on the street corner begging for money and begging for help. And people would walk by and say, well, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do that. And one, Silas come up and said, let me show you grace, let me show you God, let me show you who he is. And he said that one was the only one that showed him Jesus, and Jesus was the only one that could help him. But the religious people, as well, they meant well, but they missed the point. They missed the point. It wasn't religion was not going to save Dan. It was Jesus that was going to save Dan. And if it was up to religion, this man would have never got up and walked to start with, because they weren't going to help him get in the pool. And then if he was able to be healed, he couldn't walk on that day. I think that's kind of ironic, but he said, he answered them, He that made me whole, the same said unto me, Take up thy bed and walk. Then they asked him, What man is that which said unto thee, Take up thy bed and walk? How dare he tell you that? You know, they didn't even bother to ask, how did he heal you, or how did you get healed? They just worried about their law, the one they come up with. And he that was healed wist not who it was, for Jesus had conveyed himself away, a multitude being in that place. Afterward Jesus findeth him in the temple, and said unto him, Behold, thou art whole, sin no more, lest the worst thing come to thee. Now I always had problems with that verse when it said sin no more, until I was reading it again this morning. It hit me this morning. What does it mean when Jesus said, don't sin anymore? It's almost sounded like he said, you better keep the 10 Commandments. But to me, he's not saying that. He's saying, next it says, the man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus which had made him whole. In other words, don't get yourself, or don't look back to that bondage that you were once in. You don't go back to that unbelief. In other words, if you go back to that, if you take your bed and you lay it back down beside the pool, you're going to be back in the same condition you were in. Pick it up, walk on, and I'll direct you. That's what I get from that. But I always had a problem with saying, well, I'm going to mess up, I'm going to sin. everybody's going to mess up. But it's not, my salvation, as we read in the book of Galatians, is not based on my faith anyway. It's not based on my good works anyway. It's based on his faith. So don't sin no more means don't go back or don't look back to where you once were. It's done and finished. It's been taken care of from eternity's past. It's taken care of. So don't go back to that. Don't even think about that. Just go on. Just go on. I put in my notes, it says, why go back to unbelief of the Jews' religion that kept you on the mat to start with? Why does anybody want to go back to that? Now, I don't know if that tied all together correctly or not, but I know this, that the day I punched my radio out, and it's still out. Huh?
Did a good job.
I did a good job. Yeah, my hand hurt for a while too. But it let me realize that my religion was no good, and that the religion of do-goodism was no good. And I mentioned to Craig one day, and I think he's used it since, and that's okay. I don't mind it. But I look at the way I used to be, and I'm not knocking the churches I had been to, because like my granddad, when he preached, he was almost like a law preacher from an early age, but as he got older, he started understanding grace. And he would, as he got older, he understood grace. And I speak with my mom lately, and she says, David, why don't people see Galatians that it's the faith of Christ? It's the faith of Christ. And she is seeing that now, like I've never seen before out of her. And it's sweet to see that. Jesus has a way of opening your eyes, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. You cannot unsee the grace that he's given to you. And why we want, or people want to spy us out, or anybody out, and bring back the yoke of bondage back upon us? Or why do we want to put other people back on the mat and say, God can't forgive that unless you do this, this, and this, and this? We're putting those people back on the mat and said, God can take care of it. Jesus will take care of this. He has already taken care of this. You don't have to go back to that bondage, and you don't have to you don't have to go back and lay your bed back down by the pool hoping that the water stir again that somebody put you in. He's already taken care of that. He's already put you in the water. You just need to realize that. It sounds easy, and it is easy, and a lot of times we make it harder than it is. Now, I want to say this. I love you guys. I have no urge to go back. Matter of fact, I can't go back to that way of thinking that I have to do this and I have to do that to get right with God. Because if it was up to me to get right with God, then it would never get right. And I am the world's worst about trying to go back. Sometimes I try to go back to that pity party, and the God won't allow me to. He brings me back to the point of that mat is gone. It's already gone. You walk on, you pick it up, and you go. And as you are going, you tell others that I have taken care of that mat too. And you don't have to step into the water. You don't have to do this, and you don't have to do that. And all you have to do is just believe. Just believe. I've already taken care of all that.